Welcome to the Minnesota Rovers Tuesday evening presentation. Minnesota Rovers is an outdoors club based in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Our members organize trips that range from 1 hour to 2 weeks in Minnesota or further afield. Examples of our activities include hiking, biking, backpacking, skiing, snowshoeing, paddling, and rock climbing. We also organize conservation and trail clearing trips. Our members have experience and skills in many outdoor activities, so if you want to learn a new outdoor activity, we can probably help you. For more information, go to mnrovers.org. Now let's move on to this week's presentation.
Tonight's presentation is about cycling in Southeast Asia. Our presenters are Doug, who's a rover who regularly organizes hikes, as he reported on today, and also his son-in-law, Aaron, who's pictured above on the slide. Doug is a retired educator. He's a lifelong cyclist, a hiker, and world traveler. He's visited over 60 countries. He's climbed Kilimanjaro, hiked the Inca Trail, backpacked the Grand Canyon rim to rim, and participated in 5 bike and boat cruises in Europe. But most of all, he enjoys rover hikes. Aaron is the pastor of Colonial United Church of Christ in Prairie Village, Kansas, and according to Doug, is an amazing husband and father. Aaron has become the unofficial Cambodian travel promoter. The Cambodian people are trying to recover from incredible devastation, and they're proud of their beautiful and friendly country. Cycling puts you closer to the people, and it's a great way to experience the country. When you go, definitely do some reading about Cambodian history. You'll love it. So please welcome tonight's presenters, Doug and Aaron.
Very good. Well, thanks everybody for joining in. I have some friends and family online as well too, so I guess I have to tell the truth instead of make up a lot of lies. So you'll get a pretty much honest presentation about what Aaron and I did last winter. Aaron, I'm happy you're joining me. You have a much younger and better mind than I do, so I hope you chime in whenever possible. Are you there?
I'm here.
Great, super. All right. Well, this is going to be just a little bit of a tale about how Aaron and I spent a few days in Southeast Asia last winter. I like getting out of Dodge in the winter for a few weeks each year. And Aaron had a sabbatical from his ministry, and we decided that we were going to do a little bit of an adventure in Southeast Asia. I had been in Southeast Asia quite a bit. I did a lot of speaking, consulting, and I was able to get to almost every country in Southeast Asia at one time or another. The last time I was in Cambodia was in 2009, and I enjoyed it very much, going to Angkor Wat and some different places. And I'd also been to Vietnam before, and that was in 2020 when my son got married there, and then my friend Heidi and I went up and hiked the Sapa Valley in the northern part. So. But I don't think, Aaron, you had ever been in Southeast Asia. Am I correct?
Nope, that was the first time in Southeast Asia.
Okay. So it's good to have a new experience. I'm a fairly experienced international biker. A lot of biking, of course, in Europe and kind of a different environment. But this is the first time I was ever did a bicycling trip in Southeast Asia. Aaron and I had done some biking together. Back in 2014, the state of Missouri has a week-long big group bicycle ride along the Katy Trail, one of the first Rails to Trails projects in the country, and we managed to have a pretty good time, I think, in 2014. So there was no issues in terms of us doing more biking as well. we decided to go with an organized ride using Grasshopper Adventures. I'd never used that company before, but they did, I think, just a great job of organizing the tour for us. We were gone from February 12th to the 18th. It was about 5 days of biking, and we averaged about 30 miles per day. You might be a little disappointed that we don't see a lot more pictures of us actually bicycling. But when you're on a bicycle, it's kind of hard to take pictures sometimes. So you're going to probably see more of our adventures off bike than on bike. Um, there was a surprising amount of van transfers. We didn't necessarily start out biking from our hotel and then go to the next hotel. Oftentimes, we would get in the van and it would take us to a starting point, and we'd bike for again about 20, 30 miles, and then get back in the van. And it would take us to our next evening location. For the tour operators arranged all of our meals, all of our bikes, all of our hotels. Hotels are really quite nice. I was surprised at the accommodations that they arranged for us. Far classier accommodations than I would normally book for myself. When I booked the tour, I was told that they had to have a minimum of 6 participants, but they only had 4 of us. We had one other couple from Canada, and then Aaron and I. But I think we were perhaps the first tour that they did after COVID. So they were anxious maybe to get back in the swing of things again as well, too. We always had one guide. We always had one driver. And we paid about $2,500 per person for the tour. So it wasn't cheap, but it's nice to have an organized tour, and I like the value. Aaron, anything to add to that?
No, I think one of the things I liked about Grasshopper is that they were really trying to also do things to benefit the local economy. It wasn't something that was housed or a headquarters elsewhere. The money stayed with the people who on the trail that we were seeing.
Yeah, the guides and the drivers are very grateful that they had work again, because I think they had been basically unemployed for the last 2 to 3 years. So yeah, they're great people. We started in Siem Reap. Probably one of the most famous cities in Cambodia. From there, we went to Kampong Thong and just stayed overnight in a rather nice little inn there after a rather rugged day of biking. From Kampong Thong, we went to Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, and we spent 2 nights in Phnom Penh. From there, we went to Chao Dak to Can Thao. And in the process, crossed over the border between Cambodia and Vietnam. We stayed in Can Thao for 2 nights, and then from Can Thao we went on to Ho Chi Minh City. Primarily, with the biking, took us along the Mekong River. The Mekong River is sort of the Mississippi River of Southeast Asia. It starts up in the Himalayas and comes down through China. It cuts through a lot of Southeast Asia. If you've been to Laos or Thailand, you'll know that it's a part of the border there. And it cuts right through Cambodia, and then at the very end of the river, it's the Mekong Delta in Vietnam as well too. It was interesting to hear some of the politics around the Mekong River while we were there. Some of the same issues that we experience here in the United States in terms of dams preventing downstream communities from having water and pollution and all those kinds of things as well too. But you're going to see a lot of pictures of the Mekong River. We took a few days before the ride. We got into Siem Reap a little bit early. For those of you who know, Cambodia, Siem Reap is probably the tourist attraction of Cambodia. While over those 3 days, we there called Pub Street. If you look in the upper right-hand corner there, one of the attractions of Pub Street is you can go to a bar and sit and have a beer while you put your feet in a fish tank, and the fish come and nibble the dead skin off of your feet. Which I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere else. Maybe some of you have, but I haven't. We saw a cultural show. We saw a great circus performed by a kind of a nonprofit that helps people as well. And we went down to Tonle Sap, which is the big lake south of there as well too. So if you go to Cambodia, you definitely have to schedule a few days in Siem Reap. But what Siem Reap is mostly noted for is really Angkor Wat, and Angkor Wat is this amazing temple complex built. I think, Aaron, do you remember? Is it 15th century, 16th century? I can't remember.
No, earlier, at 10th, 11th.
Oh, 10th and 11th century, yeah. And one of the things that we did was, as you can see from this picture, it looks a little fuzzy, but one of the things to do is go for the sunrise at Angkor Wat. And we spent a morning and a little bit more looking through the temples and things like that. On the lower right-hand corner, you can kind of get an idea of sort of the age of some of these temples as you see the trees growing up over the structures that were made by man. But I don't know, Aaron, any special impressions you had of the site?
Well, you could spend weeks there because Angkor Wat is the huge one, but you also have dozens and dozens. Every time there was a new king, they would build 3 temples, and some were huge, some were smaller. Some of them have been completely overtaken by the jungle, and then others of them have been kept up. But you could, if you're into exploring temples, literally you could spend weeks and weeks and weeks just walking through it.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. One of the highlights of the places that I've traveled. I know that. But we did start our bike trip after those 3 days in Siem Reap. In the upper left-hand corner, this is a pretty typical look of a place where we would the van would park and we would get organized. Oftentimes a Buddhist monastery. You can see the monks over on the right there. They're very, very friendly people, and we enjoyed with them. On the right, you see the van that was sort of our basic mode of transportation, and that van held the 4 of us, the driver, the guide, and all 5 bicycles as well too. And it would take us from place to place. And then it would also serve as sort of the sag wagon for us. I don't think the van was ever too far away from wherever we were on the road. Aaron and I both used electric bikes, which worked out quite nicely. I've been renting electric bikes on my last few bike trips, which makes the bike ride kind of more of a vacation. As well, the other couple had regular bikes, and I don't think they had a lot of issues. But this is kind of a general look of how we started. I'm not going to give you a day-by-day blow, but generally we took back roads. Van would take us to a place and drop us off, and then follow us. The first day was pretty rough. We had a lot of gravel roads with a lot of potholes, and it was terribly dusty. But as you can see over on the right, we eventually got to places where we had small back roads that were paved as well too. But we stayed in the rural areas primarily, and out of the cities. and really got a nice chance to see the culture of the place. Um, these are just some shots of not atypical things that we would ride by. Uh, the cattle are used tremendously for transportation and agriculture. You'll see a fish farm up on the left hand corner. I'm not sure what they were growing in the middle. We saw tons and tons of farms. Lower right, banana trees were everywhere that we saw throughout our trip. Um, and Aaron, just jump right in here whenever you have something you
Yeah,
want to add.
the taro and other crops too. In every little town that you go through, it was like being on parade. We would see every child would come out, families would come out and say hello. So it is like you're on parade. And so you just say hello to everybody as you walk out, anytime you get near a village, and extremely friendly.
Yeah, oh yeah, we all had to yell, wave and yell hello. Everybody, and it wasn't just the kids; it was the adults too, in a lot of places. So yeah, I forgot about that. That was kind of fun. Um, Again, just a few more shots of the rice fields and the country houses out there. So very beautiful, beautiful country. Very unspoiled in many ways. Um,
Oh, there's a
some
question.
of the
Pam
some of
made
the
a
road.
comment about the cattle. And the cattle, I actually asked about that too, because I mean, there's food everywhere. So I was wondering about the poor cattle. The cattle, that's a breed that actually is very bony like that. And they're milked heavily. So not abused animals. The cows are
No,
how they look.
no, they didn't seem abused at all to me. I don't think I have any pictures in here, but you made a very good friend with a couple of those cattle, if I
Yes, I made
remember.
some good cow friends.
uh, this is an example of a road that takes us through a village, and if you look in the background there, you see that high arching bridge across the river. That was one of the few times where I felt it was a little tricky doing some riding. We had some very narrow roads and some very narrow streets, but getting up on those bridges and across them was a bit of a challenge now and again, but not too bad. Um, the transportation there was very, very interesting. Uh, we saw some trucks, of course, but generally day to day transportation by motorcycle or some version of a motorcycle. If you look on the lower right, that was pretty typical of their version of a semi truck as a motorcycle with a big trailer attached as well too. Uh, you see the big bundles of grasses and straws, and or the big uh, uh, the whole circuit in the back of the motorcycle as well too. Um, the small streets and very local type economies, I think, did that. Um, if you look over in the right hand corner, could anybody have any ideas of what is in those bottles there? Well, that's gasoline. They instead of having a regular a pump like we would have here in the United States, they would put this a pint or a quart of gasoline there in the Pepsi bottles, and then when their motorcycle was running low, they would just use those to fill up as opposed to having to go to a gas station. Uh, the only complaints I heard about that is if the locals got drunk, they would pass by these and try to drink them, and without a very good effect. But that was one change from when I was there earlier. What did I say? It was in 2009. I can't remember. There were no gas stations whatsoever in 2009. Everything was done this way. Now we started to see some gas stations in Cambodia as well too. Uh, One of the nice things that we were able to do was stop at a lot of local craft stores. Um, Aaron, do you remember what was our guide's name over on the left? Do you remember his name? I can't remember right offhand.
Oh, I have it written down. Ton. Is it?
Yeah, yeah. Just such a sweet guy. All of our guides, all the people that we worked with, just was just so sweet and so good. Um, but as you can see, the woman in the center upper photo was using her toes and her fingers to weave these mats that were being held to the side. We stopped at Weaver's. We stopped at a place that made these rice cakes and things like that. And these are all very small, kind of family-oriented businesses. They employed anybody. It was a relative, but very interesting to see how these things were done.
Well, one thing you'd hear also from the different parents too is that particularly in these smaller businesses, their kids wanted to move into the city. And it was a pretty common refrain where you got the sense that a lot of these village businesses like this were not going to be handed down to kids. I mean, you hear that in the United States, and the same thing's happening there too in small towns.
Yeah. The markets are gorgeous. You look at the fruit, you look at the vegetables there. They were just beautiful. They're just so picturesque. In the lower left-hand corner, you see fresh fish that were so fresh that they're still flopping around in the pans oftentimes. In the upper right-hand corner, you see snails that were for sale. You had duck eggs, you had chicken eggs, and you had quail eggs for sale all in the same place. And then, of course, you had all the different bags of different kinds of rice in most of these markets as well, too. Open air, beautiful, wonderful smells as well as we biked by that. That's really what made the bike trip interesting, I think, was going through these markets and smelling the smells and things like that. Since we were on the Mekong, we crossed rivers. I think sometimes we used ferries 2 to 3 times per day to get across different tributaries of the Mekong, and always very interesting. I don't think there was ever a fee charged, but we shared the ferries with boats and motorcycles and those kinds of things. Always kind of an interesting experience. The Mekong itself was always present, kind of a wide, calm river as well. In the lower left-hand corner, that's a bridge that washes away to an island every spring and is rebuilt every year, and we crossed that. We were required to walk our bikes across the bridge as opposed to ride them. Kind of an interesting experience as well too.
When we were there, the bridge was getting to the end of its life too, so you had that a little added adventure with that.
Yeah, it was a little creaky. One of the things we got to do was go to the floating market in Can Thao. Different if you've been to Bangkok and been to the floating market. This was rather different. This is much larger and more commercial in nature than personal, but we got to go see that, and I think we stopped and we had some tea or we had something to eat on one of the ships as well too. So interesting experience. We saw lots and lots of temples, Buddhist and Hindu both. It's a mix of cultures and religions there. The typical temple looked like the one on the left. Very brilliant inside. There were beautiful colors. Of course, you had to take your shoes off to go in, and lovely. But the other set of temples, kind of like the ones in Angkor Wat, were ones that were so old that the trees had actually taken them over. And to me, those were just absolutely fascinating and what they look like as well too. So, and I think Aaron, you probably did a better job of this than I did, but learning all the names of the different gods and deities that the statues represented.
Yeah, if you're interested in the kind of the religious history of it, it was Hinduism was imported from India, came into Cambodia, and there's a period of time where there's Buddhists and Hindus. It's Yeah, it's a civil war that kind of goes on in different times. And Jayavarman, the second, who is their greatest king, and he was Buddhist. And after that, there's you have a few more Hindus, but it becomes, and today it's 90+% Buddhist. But for a long time, Hinduism is the dominant religion. But the two religions fought pretty heavily in Cambodia for centuries.
Yeah, and went kind of back and forth. They used the same temples, didn't they? They just changed the deities in them,
Yeah, they
if I
would.
remember right.
The Buddhists would knock off the faces of the Hindu gods.
So, yeah, but beautiful temples. And again, you saw just some absolutely gorgeous temples. I think the big one in the center was from Phnom Penh, one of the big temples there. But um, a fascinating place. Well, one of the nice things that we had as a result of having a guided tour was our rest stops. We would stop mid morning usually and mid afternoon, kind of toward the end of the day. Uh, it was warm there, very hot, but we would get cold washcloths that they had kept in a freezer, give us drinks of cold water and cold pop, and always fresh fruit and sticky rice. If you see in the lower left hand corner, captured in that bamboo covering was sticky rice, and man, they sold that everywhere. Uh, in the main screen, if you look clear over on the right, there's a jar full of cashews, fresh cashews. But that was one of the great joys of the bike stop. Uh, I thought every day. Food and drink was a big part of the trip. Uh, you know, I love bike trips because you get close to the culture, and big part of the culture, of course, is the food and the fresh fruit, the pineapples. Aaron had I think coconut juice just about every day, directly from the coconut. Now, Aaron is more healthy than I am because I had my beer every day, and my favorite beer was Crud beer. Now, who the hell was the person responsible for naming that? I don't know, but it really didn't taste as cruddy as it sounded. But I thought it was kind of funny. Kind of enjoyed that. We ate a lot of street food. Um, I hope people can see what is in the tank there. You know, you go to Red Lobster here in the U.S. and you see the lobsters in the tank. You go to the street food place in Vietnam or in Cambodia, and what do you see there? Well, frog, right? Because you pick the frog that you want, and they cook it, and the frog is served to you. Aaron, give us your impression of the taste of frog.
It's it tastes like chicken. I mean, it really does. And it's I've had frog in the United States, and this was better because I think it was old fresh. I mean, it was very fresh. You got to I picked out my frog, and there it is.
Yeah, it tastes like chicken. I've had frog legs before, I guess, so that's kind of the same thing. But anyway, Aaron was far the more adventurous eater than I was on this trip, and I appreciate that.
If I can put
But
in a plug too, for those of you, Pam was asking about local food. Khmer food, I am shocked that we don't have Khmer restaurants more in the United States. You know, there's Vietnamese, you can go to Thai food, but Cambodian Khmer food is you don't see it around here so much. But it's a neat kind of hybrid between the two. It's not as spicy as you're going to get like in Thai food, but it's got a lot of the freshness that you see with Vietnamese food. Just it's fabulous, but it has its own it's definitely its own flavor. So if you ever get a chance to go to a Khmer restaurant, I highly recommend it.
no, thank you, thank you. Well, here are a few pictures that just sort of a representative of some of the places. Again, they didn't take us to high end restaurants. They took us to basically places that the natives would have eaten. Um, the one exception to that is probably in the middle and the top, and there of the street vendor, you could have snake, you could have scorpion, you could have grasshoppers. I don't think any of us ate any of that stuff, but it is there available there if you're hungry for it. But but we did eat, the pineapple rice and the banh mi and beautiful shrimp over on the right hand side as well too. Always an interesting experience when we stopped for food, I thought. Um, but anyway, it was a good trip. Um, just a few shots here from traveling. We got SIM cards from the gals in the upper right hand corner. The picture of Aaron and me outside of Angkor Wat, the Tonle Sap boats that we took, and things like that. And of course, a lot of the transportation is done by I don't know if we call them tuk-tuks there or not, but the little motorized cars that you see Aaron sitting in, much nicer than I found them in Bangkok and some other places. But um, if you want to do this, and I highly recommend that you do if you have an adventurous spirit. I had not done biking in Southeast Asia before this trip, so it was certainly a learning experience for me. There was plenty of heat and humidity. I know Aaron one night kind of went didn't have supper because of being hot and tired, and boy, I tell you, my appetite was really low a lot of times just because of that as well too. Um, don't go during the rainy season. Southeast Asia basically has two seasons: hot and dry, and hot and wet. So the rainy season basically runs through late spring and summer in our world. Book a tour. I tell you what, it's so much nicer to have someone sort of hold your hand and provide your hotel arrangements and transportation and everything. Um, Stay a few days before and after the tour, like we did. Aaron stayed for how many days? You stayed 4 or 5 days in Saigon.
Oh, well, actually, I stayed longer. I stayed like I was in 4 or 5 days, and then I went up to Hanoi and
Yeah,
then back down. So yeah, I spent a little bit more time just flying around Vietnam as well.
yeah. And I'd been to Vietnam before, so I didn't spend a lot of extra time there. Uh, Make sure you get a local SIM card for your telephone. They're not too hard to get there, so you've got um, access to the internet and things like that. Enjoy new foods. Keep an open mind. I I tend to trust to street food simply because it's almost always fresh and not been kept around for a while. They say that street vendors usually don't have the finances to buy a lot of food, so they buy everything fresh and they sell it during the day and they buy fresh again the next day. And I've never gotten sick eating street food. I have gotten sick eating at Holiday Inns and um, uh, Hyatts and things like that, but not at street food. And if you go there, be sure you buy an elephant shirt like I am showing you on the right. So it is styling, so like that. So I think that's the end of the talk. Aaron, what would you like to add?
Oh gosh, I would highly recommend if you haven't been there, I would highly recommend going. There's I guess the other thing is too is recent Cambodian history. I did not realize how bad things had gotten in Cambodia, and if you as you get to know people, they'll tell you a little bit of the story. Every family has a story of what happened with the Khmer Rouge. And in the whole story around that too, the United States does not come off particularly well. But I would not say there's a lot. I mean, I didn't ever reach anybody who was angry with the United States over it, but definitely um, that's a subtext of what happened. But the Cambodian Civil War and the Khmer Rouge, nearly one out of every 4 or 5 people in the country died. Worse, I mean,
Yeah,
which is a genocide worse than almost any nation has experienced, and they're still suffering from that.
Yeah, I didn't see it as much this time, but the last time I was uh, there, you often saw small groups of people playing musical instruments that had injuries from either the war or injuries from unexploded ordnance that they would have encountered, and so they were missing limbs, and they were playing in bands and small groups like that too. This Cambodia and Vietnam are both places that you don't want to go off trail because of there's still a lot of unexploded ordnance there as well. But I'll echo what Aaron says. The people there, I think, were so gracious. The reason I titled this "The Same Only Different" is because our guides were so sweet because you'd make a statement and say, well, must be about 5 miles to X, Y, or Z, and they say, yes, same, only different. It's 8 miles. So they would not disagree with you. They'd say, yes, you're correct, but just extremely polite. And they were very, very grateful to have us as tourists there because, again, they had been deprived of an income from tourism for quite a number of years because of the pandemic.
Heidi has a comment asking about the killing fields.
I'll let Aaron answer that one.
Yeah, that was I would say probably one of the emotionally most difficult things for me on the trip. I didn't realize how I'd heard of the killing fields, but I did not know the story. And on we had lunch, and I had heard that they had every single person that I had talked to had said, "Oh, when you get down to the Capitol, you have to go to S21." And I had never heard of it. It was the concentration camp of in the Capitol, and of the tens of thousands of people who walked through the gates, only I think 12 survived, and they killed everyone. And so I went in, and they left it. Immediately after the war, or after the war, they turned it into a museum. And it was very. I mean, I was not expecting it to be as emotionally hard hitting as it was. And I went through, and I was actually, I had some tears, and I was sitting in the courtyard at the end, and this man came up to me, and he put his hand on me. And he just sat. He didn't speak English, but he had a person who was with him. He was one of the 12 survivors. And he sat with me for a long time and just talked with me, but told me that I had to go to the killing fields. And it was getting to the end of the day. So I kind of felt after something like that happens, you do that thing. And so I got in, and I rode down to the killing fields and got down there just at the end. And that was the place where they just, when they ran out of places for bodies, they just started, this was the place where they sent people. And this was all happening on Valentine's Day. So the Capitol is bursting with, couples are out. And so it was a very powerful day. And, but I think if you go, as you talk to people, you're going to want to, you're going to want to experience that. And I think they want you to experience it because they don't think that they don't think most Westerners even know what happened to them.
I've always been amazed that in both Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos, how little Americans are held to account for the problems of the 60s and 70s that they caused there with their bombs and their chemical weapons, all that sort of thing. I guess it's a generation now that for them that's ancient history, but it's you feel, even as an American, you feel very welcome there and very safe.
Did a lot of people speak English? Was it easy to get around and talk to folks?
It was. We didn't have any problem with English in the main places. where I would always kind of find there was if we went to a Buddhist temple and there was a guy and his sons that were working on a statue, and in that case the kids were really excited to like see these foreigners, and so they came up, and so we just used Google Translate to talk, and so they took we took pictures, and and he told me about the work that he was doing, where kind of where he lived and things like that. So you could do Google Translate is your friend, but you can certainly get around with English all right.
There's a question in the chat about logistics.
It was from here from Kansas City. It was a flight. I flew from here, stop in New York, and then from New York all the way to Singapore, and then from Singapore into Cambodia. So it was just a really, really long flight, and we flew through Europe, so it was the long way. So yeah, just make yourself comfortable. It is a long flight.
Yeah, I spent a couple of weeks in the Philippines before going over. So from Minneapolis, generally you go to Seoul, Korea, and then Seoul, Korea to Southeast Asia. I think the last time I went there, I went through Bangkok, and from Bangkok then took a flight to. One of the things you do have to be careful of is you make sure these countries do require a visa. So you want to make sure that you get your visa, and it's all done online before you go.
Hey, Doug, Julie was asking about how did you find the tour group that we used? You had used them before, right?
No, that's the only time I've used them before.
Okay.
So again, it's the first time I biked in Southeast Asia. I've been to Southeast Asia, and I've been doing a lot of biking, but my biking has primarily been in Europe, not there. So no, I'm not sure exactly how I ran across the grasshopper tours, but they seem to work pretty well.
You can find them you just do a web search for Grasshopper Tours Cambodia, it'll pop right up.
And I was just wondering if they had any, I saw the elephant shirt. I was wondering if there's really interesting wildlife there that you wouldn't see anywhere else, I guess.
If you get out, we didn't go to the place, but there orangutans are in some parts, and but the deforestation of Cambodia in the last 10 years, both Thailand and Vietnam have logged off, and the places that were dense jungle are now just rice fields. So Cambodia, the land of Cambodia has changed drastically. So the habitats for the orangutans is really very narrow now.
Thanks for watching this Minnesota Rovers presentation. If you want to see more, please click on the link to our channel or the subscribe button below. Thank you.